These are videos you can never watch at night. Okay, so we all know how there's some videos you just can't watch at night because they're that scary. Well, in this series, I'll be showing you all those videos, so be ready to get scared. Okay, so yeah, after watching that video, I'm definitely not sleeping tonight. What even is that thing? And just imagine you just see it crawling in your room right now. All I gotta say is I wish you the best sleeping tonight because I'm telling you this much, I'm gonna have trouble.
So we know that the real story of The Little Mermaid is super disturbing. In the original Hans Christian Andersen story, once she's a person, she can't turn back into a mermaid. If she doesn't get the prince, she'll die. But her sisters find out that if she can spill the prince's blood, she'll be able to turn back into a mermaid. So they do what any sisters would do. They sell their hair for a dagger so that she can stab the prince. But in the end, she can't bring herself to do it, so she jumps off of a boat and disintegrates into sea foam. So it makes sense that Disney had to change that, but Disney's had to change a ton of other very disturbing details in their other movies. And just a reminder that if you have a dark curiosity, you'll love the podcast. In the original Cinderella, she doesn't get a dress from her fairy godmother. No, in the original tale, there is a tree growing next to her mother's grave, and Cinderella cries so hard over the tree that her tears water it. The tree gifts her a dress as a thank you. And then later, when the evil stepsisters are trying on the glass slipper, they realize it doesn't fit their big feet and they chop off parts of their feet. And then they go to the prince like, look at the shoes fit, and he sees that bloody mess and he's like, they absolutely do not. So a bunch of seagulls come and pluck their eyeballs out. That's all obviously terrible, but the original Mulan might be one of the worst ones. I'm gonna do part 2 for that though.
Facts about the ocean that are scarier than any horror movie. First up, I bet you didn't know that you can literally melt in the ocean. Because in the deep sea, there's something called hydrothermal vents that can reach up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit, which will allegedly cause your body to melt. But by then, you probably wouldn't even notice because all your bones would have likely been crushed by the pressure. The next fact is honestly even scarier to think about. You know how we have so many scary stories about sea creatures, like sirens, the Loch Ness Monster, or giant squids? Well, a lot of the creatures that used to be just a story are slowly being discovered as real. For example, the giant squid, which scientists found were not only real and over 59 feet in length, but are also cannibals. If that's not bad enough, here's more. Because the ocean is basically a giant graveyard. In 2014, researchers diving into an underwater cave in Mexico found the remains of a girl estimated to be 13,000 years old, meaning there's a high likelihood that if you go missing or drown that you would probably never be found. There's also 10 million viruses in every drop of seawater, meaning viruses in the ocean outnumber all of the stars in the Milky Way. The actual number is estimated to be 1 nonillion, which is a number I've never heard before, but here it is written out. That itself makes me never want to go swimming in the ocean again. Follow for more.
This is the creepy story of the Candlejack. The Candlejack is a real spirit that still exists to this day. He wears dark clothing and has never shown his face. Whoever says his name becomes the property of the spirit. Anyone who has seen this spirit has gone insane and was later found with their eyes missing. This spirit is very real, and if you ever say his name, he will come after you.
What would you do if somebody offered you $3,000 to let your child try out a new playground? They tell you you're not allowed to tell anybody about this beforehand and you can't disclose the location of where I'm taking you. But they give you $1,000 up front and you get the other $2,000 after your child starts playing on the playground. You see, this is a trap because the playground is designed in order to hurt as many young ones as possible, or even to unalive them. This is the story of Aaron Beauregard's Playground. The story follows a bunch of lower income families that are tricked into doing this, and it's about all these young ones trying to survive the playground. It's obviously a horror novel, but I've heard a lot of people talking about it on TikTok recently, and I decided to pick it up. I've seen almost everyone unanimously agree that they can't get past page 40. I'm gonna read the whole book, but I'll give you an update on here once I get to 40.
So I'm on page 41 now. Would not recommend reading that while you're eating.
I see why that page made some people stop reading, but not in the way that I thought it would be. I'm gonna finish the book though.
What is a fact from history that seems too dark to be true? How about the fact that one night in the 1940s, every baby born inside of one Memphis hospital was stolen? This is coming from a Heart Starts Pounding episode, but one night, a 21-year-old named Jessie Henderson gave birth to a child in John Gaston Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. And afterwards, a nurse comes in and says, "I'm so sorry, but your baby has passed away." The nurse doesn't tell Josie how the baby died, but she says, "You need to go to reception and they'll get everything sorted for you." So Josie's walking down the hallway, and as she is, she sees another woman out there crying who was also told that her baby just died. And then she sees another woman who's crying and was also told that the baby she just gave birth to had died. All in all, there were about 7 women in the hallway that had all been told that their babies had died, and Josie starts thinking that this is kind of weird. And Josie didn't know it yet, but every baby born in the hospital that night was stolen by this woman, Georgia Tan. Georgia was a social worker and she was friends with everybody at the hospital, and her dad was a judge, and she basically came up with this sort of kickback program. She basically told the nurses that if they took all the newborn babies and gave them to Georgia and told the mothers that they died, she would be able to sell them to adoptive parents and she would give them a little bit of the money that she earned. And I know it sounds absolutely unfathomable, but Georgia did this to 5,000 children, and I basically did a 2-part series on her for the Heart Starts Pounding podcast, and you can start listening to this episode. She says she was a social worker and then children started disappearing.
Haunted dolls from around the world. America. Annabelle. Japan. Okiku. Singapore. The Barbie doll on the girls' shrine. Australia. Letter. Brazil. Farfar. Canada. Mandy the doll. Italy. Pupa the doll.
Scary things you never knew. The last one is shocking. Taylor Swift was one celebrity that said she was concerned with climate change. But funny enough, her private jet emits more carbon in a single trip than your car does in your entire lifetime. And that jet has flown over 200 times in the past year. This is supposedly where you'll be in the next 5 years. Comment down below what your month says about you. The United States has about 6 nuclear weapons that are still missing, and nobody knows where they went or who has them. A man had donated his mother's body to scientific research when she had passed away. The research facility then sold the body to the US Army for $5,000. The Army then strapped it to a chair and blew it up with explosives. Would you rather spend one night in this bathroom or kiss the third person that appears when you click share and then more? If you Google Halloween Google 2022, a scary multiplayer game will pop up that you can play with your friends. Go try it and let me know if it works for you. Before we get to the last scary thing, please support my page by clicking the follow button for more interesting posts every day. Ducks sometimes become cannibals due to boredom. Yeah, they're not so cute now. What's worse is this behavior starts as early as 4 weeks old.
I have some theories about what I think is going to happen in Terrifier 4, and I want to talk about them. Spoiler warnings for Terrifiers 2 and 3. Let's get into it. For starters, I do not think Jonathan is actually dead. I think that would be a really bad mistake on their part. I think Art is holding on to Jonathan as a backup plan just in case things didn't go right with Victoria and Sienna, and they didn't. I think Art is going to use Jonathan as his new good vessel. So I predict in Terrifier 4, Jonathan is going to be the corrupted one that Sienna has to go after. I am also suspecting we're going to keep up the Christian holiday theming by making an Easter horror movie. They have already made it obvious that Sienna is supposed to be an angelic, Christ-like figure. They have literally put the crown of thorns on her head while they have a guy crucified to the wall behind her. And she has already risen from the dead. I think that they could take it a little bit more on the nose and have it be an Easter holiday movie, and I think that would be really fun. And we already know that Sienna is going to have to literally go to hell to save her cousin Gabby. And to get the sword, that's the only thing that could kill Art the Clown, Satan himself, supposedly. And I think the idea of Sienna having a brother, while it wouldn't be of his own willingness, would betray her like a Judas Christ situation. I think Easter would be an interesting concept for this movie. Plus, Art the Clown in a bunny suit is just as good as seeing him in a Santa suit.
3 ways to survive Jeff the Killer. Number 1. If you see a boy holding a knife at the edge of the woods, don't go near him and run the opposite way. Jeff is extremely strong and fast. Once you get too close, it's already too late. Number 2. Don't ever go looking for Jeff. Looking for him is an extremely bad idea, being so that he's extremely sick and twisted, and he'll probably do things that you wouldn't like being done to you, so looking for him shouldn't be on your list. Number 3. Don't ever make waffles past midnight, being so that Jeff is extremely obsessed with them. He loves waffles, and once he gets that scent, he'll walk towards them, ending up in your kitchen with a knife. Like and follow for more videos.
If you scare easily, swipe on. In 1989, a woman started hearing strange banging sounds in her walls and in the ceiling, and then one night, the crawl space to her attic was open, so she went to go have a look. When she's just feet away, an old man suddenly appears in the crawl space and looks her dead in the eye before vanishing. There was nobody else in the house. Worried no one's going to take her seriously over an apparent ghost in her house, she ends up calling a paranormal investigator. When the paranormal crew arrived, they were actually very skeptical until they heard loud banging in the attic and they decided to go up and have a look. As soon as the 2 men get up into the attic, one of them screams and suddenly disappears. The other, who didn't have a flashlight, starts using the flash on his camera to illuminate the attic. And he takes one of the most famous pictures in paranormal history. His partner, who was in total shock, had been lifted off the ground and tied to one of the beams. That was the last night the woman ever stayed in the house. However, it's still being rented out today, but nobody stays longer than 1 or 2 months.
Disturbing facts you'll wish you could unhear. After an autopsy, they don't put everything back where they found it. Instead, it goes into a bag that's placed inside the abdominal cavity. Morgues will hire more women than men in hopes of stopping necrophilia. In order for a person to decapitate a human head, you would have to rotate it 3 times counterclockwise in order for it to just pop off. When X-ray technology first became widely available to pediatricians, they noticed a startling number of broken bones. Doctors assumed they discovered a new rare bone disease, but in fact we just didn't know how common child abuse was. If you ever feel down, there is enough carbon inside of your body to make a diamond. So theoretically, you could wear the love of your life on your ears. The person you marry in your lifetime is statistically the person that is going to take your life. Make sure to like and follow for more videos tomorrow.
Gruesome Facts You Didn't Know, Part 124. In 2010, the Japanese government opened its execution chambers to the public for the first time, allowing journalists to take a tour of Tokyo's main gallows. Inside is simply a trapdoor, a Buddha statue, and a ring for a noose. Inmates on death row in Japan aren't told when they're going to be executed until the very last minute to prevent panic among the inmates. Family members, lawyers, and media aren't told until afterwards. When the inmate is in position, 3 prison wardens all have separate buttons. Only one releases the trapdoor and they never know which one it was. Call of the Void is the name for the feeling you sometimes get when you want to steer into oncoming traffic or jump off a cliff, although you would never do it. In 2014, Charles Manson was granted a marriage license to marry superfan Afton Burton. She had been communicating with Manson since she was 17 years old and visiting him for at least 9 years. But in February of 2015, the license expired without a ceremony ever taking place. The wedding was allegedly canceled after Manson found out that Burton and a friend only wanted to use his corpse as a tourist attraction after he died.
Phone numbers you should never call, part 12. Here's the phone number. This number belonged to a hospital for mentally insane people in the 1900s. The building one day caught fire and a lot of people were trapped inside, and a lot of them died. So the building has been abandoned ever since. But when you call that number, you can hear a very creepy recording of a woman. She greets you and talks to you with a creepy and disturbing background music, the one you can hear in a circus or something. Would you call the number?
Disturbing facts that may ruin your day. You are the oldest that you have ever been and the youngest that you will ever be. Your bed absorbs 26 gallons of your sweat every year. There are 15 dead people for every 1 person alive. Science can't measure exactly how strong a gorilla is, so there's no sure way on how to contain them. The gorilla enclosures at zoos are just based on trust. Every 18 minutes, someone in the United States has a brain aneurysm that ruptures. Vampire moths are real and can feed on the blood of humans. A jar of peanut butter contains 10 or more rodent hairs and can contain up to hundreds of insect fragments. Big Bird almost joined NASA's Challenger mission to help kids become more interested in space. Millions of kids would have watched Big Bird and the Challenger space shuttle explode on live television. Follow for more.
Videos that can't be explained. The last one is crazy. This brother and his little sibling was just hanging out when all of a sudden... Supposedly you can see if an app is spying on you by clicking the share button, sliding all the way down, clicking more. If you see an app that you don't recognize in front of your contacts, delete it immediately. That's not everything that happened to the son. He starts to see demonic figures that his parents seem to can't see.
Mom, what is this, huh? What is this? Mom, nothing, Yakub. What, Yakub? What? There's someone standing. There is no one, Yakub. Oh my God.
Also, did you know that TikTok has a secret emoji? If you type the letters scream in all lowercase with the bars around it, just like this, you'll unlock it. Let me see how many of you actually can do it. Before we get to the last part, make sure to hit that follow button because I post scary videos like this every day. The demonic presence finally reveals itself to the family on the house's security camera in the door's reflection.
Yakub, I said you need to finish your game now. It was already 1 hour, you just playing. Just 10 minutes, 10 minutes. No, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. No. Morning you are going to school, I said no. 5 minutes. And you will off the game? No. I said 10 minutes.
My mom always like saying, I'm doing top man.
What is your...
Tourists fled for their lives as huge ash clouds exploded from Mount Etna. Europe's most active volcano had experienced some activity overnight, but within a few hours, it had escalated to continuous explosions of growing intensity.
It's super traumatic. I'm like totally shook up right now. I think like, yeah, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff on Pearl Street, but not anything like that. But it's different. Boulder has changed. Pearl Street has changed. And, you know, there's things, I see stuff all the time and I'm like, really? Yeah. You know, now there's like security guards in front of the bathrooms so people don't smoke in the bathrooms. Yeah. You know, that's the truth. It's out there. Things, it's dirtier than it used to be. It's not as safe as it used to be, but you don't expect to see it at that level. Yeah.
This is a true dark web story. Two best friends, Vivian and Bella. They're sophomores studying programming in college. In their second year of college, they started having weekly assignments that were done at home. And Bella was the only one in class that was getting straight A's in these assignments. Vivian, which is Bella's best friend, wanted to ace these tests so bad. So she asked Bella to help her out. But Bella spilled the truth, telling Vivian that she never studied for these assignments. She had a guy from the deep web that was experienced in programming, and she pays him so little and he provides her the assignment answers. Vivian was kind of freaked out because she heard so many stories about the deep web. A few days later, the professor announced the next assignment date. Vivian went back home the same day and asked Bella how to get in touch with that same man. So Bella sent her the Onion web link, and that web link took her to a site that has a chat box with that man. So Vivian got in touch with that man as well, and surely she started acing all her tests with Bella.
They were known as the smartest girls in that school. So weeks passed by, and Vivian sent questions to that man from the deep web for her next assignment. The man refused to take that payment for that specific assignment. Then he asked for another form of payment, so Vivian got confused and then offered to double the amount. The man still refused and insisted on taking inappropriate pictures from Vivian as a form of payment. The thing that scared Vivian was, how did the man know that she was a girl? Name, age, gender, and location are all supposedly anonymous on that website. But he somehow found out a few things about Vivian. She immediately logged out and quit contacting that man. The next day, Vivian goes to class and asks Bella if the man did the same thing to her. Bella said yes, I was already sending him inappropriate pictures regularly. And that same night, Vivian was at home having dinner. She got many calls from an unknown number. She picked up, and it was that man. And he told her that she has no choice but to send the pictures. Vivian eventually hung up the phone, and then an hour later, she received a text from another unknown number. She opened that video, and she saw Bella tied up on her bed, dead. There was a text right under the video saying, "You're next." She freaked out and then contacted the authorities. The police investigation took many months. Vivian eventually dropped out of that school and then transferred to another state. The scary thing behind all of this is that this man, that's a specialized programmer from the deep web, was never found, and he's still out there.
Buckle the fuck up because this is a wild ride. The incident in Ghostland is about these two sisters, Beth and Vera, and their mom, Colleen. And the three of them are traveling to a relative's house who recently died. On the way there, they hear on the radio about the string of home invasions that's happened in the area. And, of course, they then become the next victims. That night, two intruders break into their house, and they are known as the Candy Truck Woman and the Fat Man. A really intense struggle ensues between all of them, but Colleen ends up actually killing both intruders and saving everybody. Fast forward, the girls are both adults and Beth is now a successful author. But one night she gets a call from Vera, who still lives in the same home with their mother. Beth shows up to the house to see what's going on and finds that Vera is essentially locked in a padded room in the basement, and Colleen explains to Beth that Vera is so traumatized from the night that they were attacked that she's never been able to move on from it. And Vera explains to Beth how she is still convinced that the intruders are still out there and trying to get them. So Beth starts having these super weird dreams, and one night she is attacked by the Candy Truck Woman, who takes her to the basement. And she finds Vera also in the basement, beaten. At this point, Vera is crying and begging Beth to wake up and face reality, and this is where the plot twist just hits us in the fucking face. Because the reality is that Beth is not remembering things the way that they actually happened. So now Beth has a flashback, and it's revealed that the intruders actually killed their mother directly in front of them. And Beth and Vera are not adults. And in fact, they never made it out of the basement. In reality, they are still teenagers being held captive in their own basement. Beth completely dissociated and came up with this fantasy adult world to cope with them watching their mother get murdered in front of them and also cope with what's happening to them in real time. And she retreats into this fantasy world where her adult life is perfect and everything she dreamed of because it's easier than acknowledging what's happening to them in the current moment. So at this point, she's back to reality and the Fat Man takes Beth upstairs and tries to SA her. But Beth puts up one hell of a fight and manages to free Vera from the basement, and the two of them escape out of the house. And they make it out to the road where they find a couple of police officers who call for backup. But just when you think everything's gonna be alright, it's not. The Candy Truck Woman shows up and shoots the cops, recaptures the girls, and takes them back to the house. So Beth once again dissociates and retreats back to her fantasy life. But this time, adult Beth sees Vera screaming for help, and she makes a conscious decision to come back to reality to rescue Vera. Beth breaks free from the Fat Man and gets into this really intense and violent fight with the Candy Truck Woman. But finally, the backup that the cops called for shows up, and a state trooper arrives and shoots the Candy Truck Woman and the Fat Man. More police show up and they take Beth and Vera out of the house to safety. And the last shot is Beth looking back and seeing a ghostly apparition of their mother, who we now know was murdered, in the window, waving goodbye to them. This is just such a tragically beautiful movie.
At around 8 p.m. on August 19, 1962, a 12-year-old boy named Raimundo Marfa da Silva sat near the fireplace in the main room of a shack in rural Brazil. Raimundo lived in this shack with his father Rivelino, as well as his two younger brothers. And so that night, as Raimundo sat by the fire, his father, Rivelino, came into the room and he sat down next to him. And the two just sat there quietly, periodically poking at the fire with a stick and just sitting there enjoying the silence. And as these two were sitting there, suddenly Raimundo heard a strange sound
sound coming from the kitchen. And he saw this dark figure on all fours quickly kind of maneuvering across the ground out of sight. And immediately Raimundo's terrified. He has no idea what this is. And so instinctively he turns to his dad, and his dad is also staring at the kitchen, wide-eyed, clearly having seen the same thing. And then before Raimundo could do anything, his dad jumped up and slammed the door shut, separating them from the kitchen, and locked it. But eventually, Rivellino and his sons began to hear voices, and they were coming from outside the shack. Whoever was out there, or whatever was out there, was talking about Rivellino. They could hear that name, and what they were kind of saying is, if Rivellino comes out here, we're going to kill him. And at that point, Rivellino told his sons to stay put, and he was going to go out there and investigate. He's got a knife in hand, just in case Rivellino went outside. And that was the last time the boys ever spoke to their father. 6 months later, on March 10th, 1963, 5 men were out hunting in the wilderness not far from Raimundo's family's shack. And at some point, they came across this huge boulder, and this boulder had a big crevice in it, like a big gap in this rock. And one of the hunters happened to walk past it and looked into this crevice, and they found a skeleton. And that skeleton belonged to Rivellino, Raimundo's father. But that was not the end of the story. Far from it. So on the day that Rivellino stepped out the front door and then was never heard from again, Raimundo and his brothers had been instructed by their dad to stay put while Rivellino went out looking around. But Raimundo just felt really nervous after his dad had stepped out the front door and had presumably stepped outside. So he defied his father. He opened up the door that led outside. He saw his dad stepping into this huge cloud of yellow smoke. And amidst this smoke were these like cylindrical objects that were floating in the air, spinning around in a circle, seemingly spitting out the smoke. And Raimundo, he had no idea what he was looking at. And so Raimundo yelled out for his dad, like, "Dad, where are you going?" And he charged towards his father to try to stop him. But as soon as Raimundo went out into the yellow smoke, the smoke just dissipated, the cylinders disappeared, and as soon as it was all gone, his dad was gone too. And so quickly, Raimundo and his brothers alerted authorities, and they launched the search for him, and for days they combed the area near that boulder as well, and they couldn't find Rivellino. And so eventually, they abandoned the search. And then 6 months later, his body was magically found in that crevice. To this day, nobody knows what actually happened to Rivellino and how he wound up inside of that rock crevice.